Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. My name is Saajid. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about my problems with diversity and representation. Ooh. So I just want to disclaim, first of all, I'm a huge advocate for diversity and representation. Y'all know who I am, y'all know what I stand for, y'all know the books that I read if you know me. So don't walk away from this video thinking that this boy is here to drag the SJWs and PC culture and all that kind of stuff. That's not me. The second disclaimer is these are just my opinions, my own personal opinions, my opinion, as the French would say, right? These are just my own personal opinions informed by my own personal perspectives and possibly, most likely, biases as well. So I just want everybody to know going into this video that I'm not trying to like say that these are facts. All of that being said though, I'm probably right. So diversity is becoming a lot more common these days because it's what people want to see. Diversity essentially means more visibility of different types of people in media. What I feel like we mean when we say diversity is extra visibility. We want to see more people who we've never really seen represented at the forefront in mainstream Western media. So we know what diversity means, but there's another term that we throw around all the time, and that's representation. And I question, like, what do we mean by representation? Because I feel like representation is just kind of slapped onto everything nowadays. I would be watching a video from a booktuber and they would read a book that, you know, it might be about a white straight main protagonist, and there might be a black side character or a non-binary side character or a disabled side character, and the booktuber would be like, well, this book had disabled rep in it and this book had non-binary rep in it, and I'm like, is it representation or was it just a side character who so happens to be those things? Like, is it really representation? Or is it just visibility? Because for me, representation, I feel like there's some qualifiers for that you need to meet in order for it to be considered representation. For me, representation is where the person who is being represented, where their story takes center stage, where we get to see the issues that affect them, where we get to see how their identities impact how they live in the world, even if it's a story that's not about identity politics or oppression or marginalization, which is important because not every story about marginalized people need to be about marginalization and oppression. I still think that with representation, the main protagonist, their story has to take center stage. Their identity and who they are, to some extent at the very least, has to take center stage for me to call it representation, right? That's the thing. Like, for me, I think, you know, it has to go a lot deeper. Even if it is a side character and even if it is not own voices or whatever, there needs to be a lot more engagement and agency and focus on the character for me to be able to consider that representation. I watched SpiderMan Homecoming. Was it Homecoming? No, Far From Home. The second one where they went to Europe. I watched that and I was really looking forward to this hijabi character who everybody was talking about. So everybody was talking about how, oh, in Spider-Man there's a hijabi character. And I was like, yes, I'm ready to see a badass hijabi help Spider-Man or whatnot. Or just be like a regular side character doing her thing and whatnot. And I watched the movie and sis didn't have a line. She didn't say a word. She was an extra. And everybody was praising it. Everybody was talking about how, oh, this is the first time that Marvel represented a hijabi. This is the first hijabi in the Marvel universe. This is a, you know, look at this hijabi. She's a hijabi. Oh my God. They're representing a hijabi Muslim girl. This is the first Muslim girl. This is the, and I'm like, no, like, she didn't have, that's not representation. That is literally just visibility. And yes, that has value in it as well, you know. It's great that they are making more Muslim people and hijabi women more visible so that people could become desensitized to that image in media, and so that Muslims could, you know, see themselves in media or whatnot, or see images of themselves reflected. But at the end of the day, it's not representation, it's just diversity. And I feel like sometimes, you know, on Booktube, the way that I see people talking about books, and this could just be me being, you know, biased or, you know, making just, you know, quick observations, but I feel like people are willing to like quickly call something representation in a book that they pick up when it's not representation, when it's probably just diversity or just visibility. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the ways in which representation could sometimes be harmful and how we need to be aware of that. Sometimes you could have something that might seem really good, it could be own voices representation or whatever, but sometimes it might be bad, you know? The media industry, the publishing industry, all media industries are now realizing that there is a demand for diversity, and in that demand for diversity now becomes commodified. Anything that happens in capitalism is problematic. Let's just put it there, right? Even though we want to see more diversity, even though we want to see our issues represented more, we're always going to have to negotiate some sort of problematic issue surrounding it, because at the end of the day, we're asking capitalism and capitalist industries to represent us, right? And capitalism is inherently problematic, the root of all evil, but we won't get there. You see, the thing about it is, it's like, you know, I feel like now publishing houses and a lot of media companies, even though a lot of them probably do have good intentions in terms of being diverse and representing different people, I feel like a lot of them are also pandering to audiences. I feel like profitability in the diversity and the representation is something that they consider quite a lot. A lot of people are saying things like, you know, a lot of these books that come out are just not good. They're not good, they're just there because they're diverse. And I kind of agree to some extent. I've seen media that comes out, that people are putting out there, that's diverse, but it's not good. It might be misrepresentative, like this new Hala movie that's coming out that everybody's complaining about. I mean, I only saw the trailer, but it seems like from the trailer that the movie is going to be a very problematic representation of Muslims, right? Then you might have a piece of media that's good in terms of its representation, so the representation is good and the issues that it talks about is good, but the actual quality of the movie or the writing or whatever of the book itself is just not good. It's just objectively not good. We're allowing the publishing industry to just, you know, ride the profitability of our stories and our identities and not really care much about the intrinsic value of it, if that makes sense. I recently started reading a book that I'm enjoying quite a lot right now, actually, but the beginning of the book, like the very first lines of the book and the first lines of the summary, centered the character's identity. So this main protagonist is of so-and-so race, of so-and-so nationality, of so-and-so religion, and she's at a crossroads, and she's, you know, she's multiple different things in one, and she is a complex intersectional human being. And it's like, it starts off like that, but then when you read the story actually has nothing to do with her identity. It might pop up every now and again, but the story isn't ultimately centered around her identity, which is fine. You know, it's great to have a story about somebody who is, you know, not the typical, prototypical, default human being represented in a story. And it doesn't have to be about identity politics and their oppression and marginalization, but I feel like the book is being pitched based on the character's identity and who she is as a person and what her identities are, as opposed to what the actual story is about. It just goes to show that the publishing industry too is in on this kind of like, let's capitalize on this, you know, diversity thing. Let's commodify it. Let us pander to them because we know they want to see books with more diversity. So let's let them know from the forefront that this book has diversity in it, when the book itself doesn't really talk about the diversity or the representation or the identities that it's trying to talk about. And then also too, with representation, we have to be conscious of the ways in which people from certain communities could misrepresent their communities. We have a lot of value for things that are own voices, and I get that. I support own voices, but I also have a problem with own voices, not just because sometimes it's hard to determine whether or not a book is own voices, because, you know, sometimes you might have a queer author or writing a book about a queer protagonist, but the author mightn't be out. So how do you say its own voices? You understand? So you might have a situation like that. Or most recently, I read a book that really pissed me off. I didn't even read it. I read like the first 5 pages and I had to put it down. It is a book about two main protagonists, and one of them is Trinidadian, and the author is actually Trinidadian American, and they made the decision to write the Trinidadian's character's perspective in Trinidadian Creole. Trinidadian Creole is our version of English. It's the English that I naturally speak. It's the English that every Trinidadian naturally speaks. And goodness gracious, if this author did not butcher our language. I was the first paragraph alone was just awful. And I was reading it and I just felt immediately triggered, and I had to put the book down, because it's like, my mind immediately went to the fact that this is a book that is published under one of the big five, right? It's published in the traditional American publishing industry. So it inevitably has a bigger platform than young adult authors from Trinidad. This author has a bigger platform than Tamika Gibson, right? Than Kevin Jared Hussein, than these YA authors from Trinidad who don't have the same kind of reach. You have so much privilege as a global north writer. You have so much privilege as somebody who is published under the traditional publishing industry. Now, mind you, the book is probably not a lead title. Most of y'all must probably haven't heard of it, but it's still inevitably going to have more buzz and a bigger platform, especially in our community, which is very American-centric, than books from Trinidad published by Trinidadian authors in our publishing industry down here in the region, right? When I was reading the book, it really made me think about how, you know, people are going to call this own voices representation because the author is Trinidadian when she's actually Trinidadian American, which is still Trinidadian, but at the end of the day, there's a disconnect there. There is a distance, you know, a Trinidadian from Trinidad and a Trinidadian American or Canadian or British person from the diaspora are two contextually different people. For one to write about the other, you're going to have to do rigorous research and consultation and beta reading and maybe even workshops and interviews and all kind of stuff to really understand the complexity of the other person's identity and culture. It wasn't just that the author butchered the Creole language. I skipped to another page, like page 100 or something, and I saw that they had like a paragraph where the Trinidadian character was talking about something with regards to Trinidadian culture, and it was very, very myopic. It was a very antiquated, exaggerated idea of what Trinidad is like and what Trinidadians are like, and it really, 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 really offended me. I think it's important for us to firstly, you know, whenever we're reading a book that is even own voices that may seem to be positively representing the community that the author is from, we really need to think about the positionality of the author. We really need to think about, you know, what privilege does this author have in their community and what potential do they have to misrepresent and to erase other members of their community in representing their community, if that makes sense. We need to think about that, and based on the stuff that I was thinking about before, we really need to have a better idea of what we consider as representation versus visibility and diversity, right? We really need to have a better idea of what qualifies as representation and what we're willing to call representation. And these are, again, all of my opinions, right? So if you think differently, or if you have different ideas, or if you agree with me and you have a different way of expressing it, I would love to know your thoughts on all of this in the comments down below. I'm very curious because this is something that I've been thinking about quite a lot. Make sure to like if you like this video, share, follow me on social media, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely, lovely day, and until next time, inshallah, keep reading.